Thank you all for tuning in to this Liberty Public Schools State of the District. As has been the case for this entire year, we're doing things a little bit differently this year with our virtual series. And so I'm excited to kick off this Liberty Public Schools 2020-2021 State of the School Address. As it relates to the rest of this week, over the course of the next several days, April 6th through April 9th, you'll be hearing from our Innovation and Learning Department with Dr. Jeanette Westfall and Dr. Julie Moore sharing a little bit about what's been going on in their world. Followed up the next day on April 7th from the Office of Equity and Dr. Andrea Dixon Seahorn. Both of these departments have been reorganized over the course of the last year, so we appreciate all of the work and the efforts of this team as they've embarked on new territory, new spaces, all during the course of a pandemic. We'll follow that up with a report from our Finance and Operations Department, Mrs. Cindy Sullivan, Mr. Steve Anderson, and then we'll round out the week in hearing from Dr. Vogelaar in our Human Resources Department. I wanted to start with my portion by sharing a little bit and really beginning with just a general expression of thanks and gratitude. Whether it's to the work that's been done over the course of last year in wrapping up the fourth quarter and shifting to a pandemic and shuttering our school doors, to returning our employees to work in early June, the work that transpired in getting us ready for summer school, then also preparing to start a new school year with our various return to learn scenarios. Going ahead and starting classes on September 8th, welcoming our students and our staff back in a variety of learning modalities, but then also all of your efforts through collaboration, through the feedback that we've received, your suggestions and your ideas as well. We certainly could not be where we are without your efforts, your time, your energy, your commitment, and your perseverance. More importantly, we want to thank you for taking care of students, of our learners, and one another, whether you're certified, whether you're support staff. Everything that you do day in and day out goes noticed, and we wanted to recognize that. So thank you on behalf of Liberty Public Schools for everything that you've done over the course of this last year. I also want to take a look back because I think if we're not careful, we could certainly miss many of those accomplishments. We've certainly faced a lot of challenges and adjustments over the course of this last year, but we also have done a lot. In fact, cannot begin to capture all of it. It was a few weeks ago where we gathered with our leadership team and cabinet, and we paused and we reflected after winter break on the many challenges we've faced, but also began to write out a lot of the accomplishments. And I want to spend some time during this district update to be able to share some of those accomplishments as we look back. Looking back on the fourth quarter of last year, it happened kind of abruptly, in which we transitioned 13,000 students, nearly 2,000 staff, to learning and working remotely from home. I remember it vividly. In nearly a year ago, those decisions being made to close our doors, really with some uncertainty as to the days and weeks and months ahead. Around that same time, our Nutrition Services Department mobilized to be able to provide nutrition and meals for students under the age of 18. We partnered with groups like Feed Northland Kids, Pleasant Valley Baptist Church to provide meal kits to families to sustain them through the coming weeks, but then also into the summer months and over the course of this entire academic school year. At the same time, we were curious as to how our construction projects might be impacted. With that said, we were able to weather the school year and complete the 2018 no tax increase bond issue projects uninterrupted. We also appreciate the efforts of Dallas and the communications department in being able to increase our communication efforts for our students, our staff, and families. That included the creation of a parent portal through Let's Talk on our district's website, a variety of surveys that were administered, focus groups that were held, as well as just a variety of communication mechanisms or efforts that were put in place to be able to share information with our students, our staff, as well as our families. We also worked through a variety of return to learn scenarios as plans were put in place to be able to transition our employees back to work, provide virtual and face-to-face summer school options, to restart our fine arts and athletic activities, as well as prepare for the 2020-2021 school year. At the same time, nearly 2,500 students in pre-K through grades 12 transitioned to Liberty Virtual School that was instructed or taught by our very own Liberty Public Schools teachers. Another challenge that we faced, but also accomplishment, was the designing and implementation of staff development experiences to support our LPS return to learn efforts, as well as incorporating early release time mid-year to be able to support our ongoing needs by embedding teacher collaboration time in support of our learners and their academic needs. The list continues. In an effort to gauge students' academic progress throughout the year, teachers have adjusted their instruction. They've incorporated formative and interim assessments to personalize learning and continue to grow our capacity in and around multi-tiered systems of support. At the same time, our special education department, our teachers and our staff worked very closely with learners and their families to continue to ensure that services did not stop and that they were not interrupted, not only during the fourth quarter of last year, but over the entirety of the 2020-2021 school year. We thank you for their efforts in support of our neediest learners. We also shifted real-world learning opportunities to virtual experiences in partnership with area businesses, in which internships moved to virtual, or experiences like mentoring moved to virtual opportunities with our students. That was done in partnership with Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation as we connected with them in area metropolitan districts over the course of the year in navigating the pandemic, but then also expanding real-world learning opportunities and reimagining assessment and accountability, all during the period of the pandemic. A couple of additional accomplishments that we wanted to highlight was the collaboration that we've embarked upon over the course of this year with our Liberty community partners. Those community partners consist of the school district, the City of Liberty, William Jewell College, Liberty Hospital, and Clay County Public Health Center. Over this year, we've met with them weekly on Wednesdays on a virtual environment to be able to share our challenges, to problem solve, and then most recently during the spring months, partnered together to develop and expand Operation Safe Community, the joint task force that's able to provide vaccines through the Northland. And then lastly, with the leadership of our Board of Education, we appreciate their help in continuing the work of our strategic plan as we reflect on the lessons that we've learned during COVID-19, but then also the work that's been done over the course of the last several months and how we emerge from the pandemic in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Part of the narrative that's been expressed over the course of these last several months across our country is the need to assess learning gaps that exist among our students from pre-K through grades 12. And while there's certainly a need to know exactly where our learners are at, both from an academic and a social emotional standpoint, I would argue that perhaps we've positioned ourselves in our ability to really think of this as a learning leap forward. There's a quote from Diane Ravitch, and it simply states, "When the children return to school, they will have returned with a new history that we will need to help them identify and make sense of. When the children return to school, we will need to listen to them, let their stories be told. They have endured a year that has no parallel in modern times. There is no assessment that applies to who they are or what they have learned. Remember, their brains did not go into hibernation during this year. Their brains may not have been focused on traditional school material, but they did not stop either." So I would challenge us to think about the weeks and months ahead as we enter into this new school year starting 2021-2022. Perhaps we approach it from a learning leap. What have our students experienced? What have they learned? How have their stories been shaped? And you all are an integral part to that as we think about the challenges that lie ahead of us. As we look ahead, I wanted to share some information centered around this question: how do we emerge from a pandemic? Last year it was, how do we enter into a pandemic? Well, hopefully that light is at the end of the tunnel. And so how we emerge is equally important as anything that we've done to date. And that really centers around a couple of key pieces, we believe. The first of which is our Liberty Public Schools graduate profile. A close second to that is our Liberty Public Schools vivid vision. And I would dare say and underscore this, that as we've navigated the pandemic with our hashtag #InThisTogether LPS, how we emerge and how we see our future is centered around that very same thing. Collaboration, a sense of belonging, but then how can we do this work together in partnership with our nearly 2,000 faculty and staff, our nearly 13,000 learners in pre-K through grades 12, all of our families, and our entire Liberty Public Schools community. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about the Liberty Public Schools graduate profile. This was developed a couple years in the making. and centers in around 5 key areas of focus: academic, cultural, personal, professional, and entrepreneurial areas. Under each of these, you can unpack the various skills and dispositions that we want our graduates to attain upon completion of school from Liberty Public Schools as they walk across and receive their diplomas. But that's not solely relegated to high school. It starts at an early age, be it the elementary level, the middle level, or the high school level. And just as we've developed these areas of focus and the skills that we believe our students will need upon exiting high school and later on into life, I would say that we've probably experienced these skills and dispositions to a greater magnitude over the last year. And so how can we help shape the influence that the pandemic has had around both these academic, cultural, personal, professional, entrepreneurial skills and dispositions? Looking ahead, we'll want to ensure that all of our content areas, all of our departments, are really honing in on how they can infuse these skills and dispositions across all academic areas and experiences within Liberty Public Schools. How we share that future with our community is captured with our Vivid Vision. Centered around the graduate profile, the Vivid Vision breaks down our work into 5 key areas: learning, teaching, leadership, professional growth, and then finally, a sense of community and a sense of belonging. From there, we developed our strategic plan, and just as our strategic leadership team helps kind of carry the work forward of our strategic plan for an entire district, hopefully it has connections to our school improvement plans, our departmental goals. It is the environment or the culture that we create through our professional learning communities work, but at the same time, we look at it annually, but then we also allow for flexibility and agility as we face challenges and uncertainty in moving forward through this strategic direction. We've learned that certainly during the period of the pandemic and navigating a variety of scenarios, but at the same time pivoting and adjusting and having to flex whenever we need to flex in service to all of our students. Part of that's been accomplished through the reorganization that we shared a little bit about earlier that began last year, but that also became effect on July 1 through the creation of our Innovation and Learning Department, but then also in the creation of our Office of Equity. That culminates in a high school experience that is connecting our graduate profile to our Vivid Visions, to our strategic plan, and really wanting to share a little bit more about that. How can we incorporate real-world learning experiences across our pre-K through grade 12 continuum? Whether it's in content area, whether it's in experiences, or whether it's a little more immersive as students get ready to graduate and find their place in our society. Real-world learning experiences have embedded within it a notion or concept of a market value asset. And so by the time a student graduates from high school, our hope is they not only receive their diploma in hand, but they have one of these +1 experiences or market value assets that serves as a bridge as they matriculate out of the pre-K through 12 experience into careers, into experiences, or into college and university settings for them to be successful. A market value asset might include something like an internship, a dual credit experience, advanced placement courses, client-based projects, apprenticeship experiences, accumulation of a credential or multiple credentials through various experiences while in high school, entrepreneurial opportunities, or perhaps something that a student initiates themselves through a build-your-own experience. That really causes us to think about how we measure things a little bit differently. And so we've coined the phrase uncommon measures. Uncommon measures would bring together the academic pieces and metrics that we typically rely on, be it assessment throughout the course of the year, be it application of those skills and dispositions, be it end-of-year exams, be it ACT, SAT, some of those traditional academic measures, coupled with social emotional growth and how our students are doing socially and emotionally, but then lastly, bringing in that real-world learning experience. So as we think about our district scorecard, as we think about how we convey how our students are doing, how are they doing academically, how are they doing socially and emotionally, but then lastly, how are they going about acquiring the skills and dispositions and real-world learning experiences for them to be successful in college, in careers, and in life. From that being said, wanted to kind of wrap up in the next several slides as we move forward over the course of the remainder of this year, but then through the summer and into the beginning of the next school year, continuing to focus on using data to inform our decision making. Whether it's how our students have done over the course of this year, whether it's how our climate and community looks in response to COVID-19 and trends, or whether it's what we need to do differently in adjusting for the summer as well as the next academic school year. We're going to continue to use data to inform our decision-making processes. With that said, we're nearing the completion of our second round through our Operation Safe LPS Vaccine Clinic. We're so very grateful for the partnerships that came together to be able to put this opportunity in place. I know many of you have received the vaccine in other means and other locations. But for those that have continued to stay connected with Operation Safe Community, first dose was administered on March 18th, 19th, 20th. We're looking to the dates of April 8th, 9th, and 10th for many of our employees that will receive the second dose of the vaccine. And then we heard earlier last week that students are now being talked about as far as their ability to receive the vaccine as early as 12 years of age and up. We'll continue to watch that closely and share information as that is made available to the district as well as to our entire community. As we continue to navigate the coming weeks and months in completing the school year, I greatly appreciate Dallas and his team for emphasizing communication and information that would need to be shared with our staff, with our families, and our entire community. We're going to continue to do that as changes come our way or adjustments need to be made. As we monitor our data, we'll continue to provide information as well as keep our frequently asked questions updated and resources that are contained within our LPS district website. Before I conclude, I also want to express appreciation to our Board of Education for their time and energy over the course of this year. We have 7 incredibly dedicated individuals that have served over the years on Liberty Public Schools Board of Education. We do not have an election this week as far as a board election. We want to thank a couple of folks. Nick Bartlow decided to sign up again in terms of run for board office. In addition, Drew Marriott has put his name in the hat. Because we only had 2 individuals express appreciation for express their interest in pursuing those 2 Board of Education seats, we do not then have to have an election. We also want to thank David Evans for his leadership over the years and service to Liberty Public Schools. He will be kind of bowing out from his Board of Education service, and so we want to express our gratitude to him, and we'll do that at our upcoming April board meeting, in which we'll reorganize our board, and then looking ahead for the remainder of this year, continue to navigate the legislative session that has been fairly contentious thus far, as many education topics are being seen in both the House of Representatives as well as in the Missouri Senate. With that said, we want to continue to welcome your ideas and your suggestions, questions that you may have. You can reach out with us in a variety of means, whether it's through your school and your department administration, through our Let's Talk portal, or reaching out to any of our cabinet members that are listed here as well. Thank you for tuning in this week for our LPS State of the District updates. We look forward to connecting with you as we conclude this school year. Take care.